Would it not be more rebellious, more destabilising to try and do a sitcom?
Yeah, but that is just so boring. It corresponds very much to my idea of a dream landscape. It's the kind of place that evokes the necessary wildness I think everyone feels inside themselves, and I feel it very much here physically, and I find it very exciting because of that, because there's nothing for miles and miles and miles, and it's just wind and rain and
no
all the elements.
Man,
yeah, and you just feel the elements very, very strongly and very violently, and that I love. You still can find this here, right? There are still places here that you really do think there aren't any other people around.
Oh, no, that's true.
And that feeling is tremendous, and that feeling you don't get in many places now. I've always been a loner, and I've always been apart from the crowd. I've never run with any crowd, ever since I was very small. I've been a loner. That's why I like this sort of countryside, because it's an alone countryside.
Is it a pleasant experience coming back? I mean, you must have seen enormous changes since you moved away and have been travelling the world.
Yeah, the change is obviously everywhere is changing so much, and so you sort of grow with the change, and it's not a shock. Sometimes it's a disappointment, like for instance England, because I think people seem to care less about the country. Do you know what I mean? That's in fact the first thing that I really noticed, having not lived in England for a while and then coming back over the years. I left when about 10 years ago. I've been living 12 years, I think, now in Paris. And when I came back, each time I came back, that was the thing that I really saw, was that people just didn't seem to care about their environment. They didn't care about their shops, they didn't care about if there was dirt in the streets, they didn't care. You know, it's just a question of respecting your own environment, do you know what I mean? But I mean, anyone could just go out and sort of sweep the pavement in front of their shop, why not?
So do you tend to feel more in tune with the French then?
In tune in the way, in, let's say, my adoptive life, but I'm very much obviously in tune with the English because it's my roots. So I'm instinctively in tune with the English. And I've adopted the French way of life because it pleases me. Yes. And also I've made my home there because I married a Frenchman. I also speak French fluently, so I didn't have the problem of feeling an outsider because I didn't know the language.
You said a very interesting thing in an interview, that when you met Jean-Michel Jarre, that you saw yourself reflected in masculine form. What did you mean by that?
He seemed to mirror everything that I was, but in a different form. We're both extremely solitary people, but you can't live in total solitary confinement in life. I mean, it's very difficult to do that. So you can only live in solitude inside yourself. And if you find a partner that doesn't invade on this solitude, then you can live together very contentedly. And children come along and they have their own lives and they very quickly grow up into their own people. And they don't necessarily have to invade that area either, because they're developing their own world.
But how do you mean invade that solitude? Do you mean, give me an example?
Well, it's invasion to me is judging people, is criticizing people, is making definite statements about people. When the moment you've made any kind of judgment about something, it changes. So couples and people who live together keep wanting to change each other, keep wanting to criticize each other, saying, well, why did you do this, why did you do that? I don't know the hell why I do things, I do them, accept them. But if somebody can't accept them, that means they want to change you. If somebody wants to change you, well, then that's finished, because there's no way that anybody can change anybody.
So is that something then that you and your husband thrive on, that difference in each other?
I think so, yes, because we're not afraid by it. He's not afraid when I'm in strange moods or if I'm going off on films. we have a basic trust of each other in the way we think and the way we feel, which means that we can function. Because if you don't trust the human being that you live with, then life is a nightmare. All the things of love at first sight don't actually exist. What it is that you recognize, you suddenly are at a stage in your life when you recognize in somebody what is lacking in you.
So what were the things then that you recognised that were lacking in yourself that you found in your husband?
When I say lacking in myself, it's like complementary things. Because I was extremely introverted and extremely introverted, although you won't think so as I'm chatting to you. But
no, I can understand that.
And he was able to take me out of that isolation which I found myself in, and to make me join the world in a sense.
Blowing away. I mean, I know you chose this because of the grandeur of the Scottish scenery, but honestly, Charlotte, I would not have struggled if you'd chosen the Seychelles.
Too easy the Seychelles, too comfortable.
As if, who wants to be comfortable?
Exactly.
Now, oh, of course, the wind has stopped. Pleasant thing. Do you enjoy being a mum?
Do I enjoy being a mum? Yes, I do. I do enjoy being a mum.
What are the good things about it?
The feeling of having of being part of a tribe, do you know what I mean, that you've created. I've always been frightened about being connected to things, and the only thing that I haven't been frightened about, which is quite strange, is the fact of having children. It was just something that reassured me enormously.
Well, why this fear of being connected to things? When you say things, do you mean people?
Well, yeah, yes, in a sense, people and situations, but I guess it's, very much part of my personality, which I just have to deal with. Because as I say, I'm inside, I'm very wild and very rebellious, and I don't like to be put into any kind of format, into any type of image, which, people obviously do, because I've done certain things in my film career, and they'll say, well, she's that type of woman, or that type of woman, or that type of woman, which always makes me laugh, because it's all about an image which other people fabricate of you. It has nothing to do with who you are. And that you can retain as secret as you want, because nobody needs to know about that.
Do you need to know about it, though?
Well, it's a self-discovering process every day of your life, and I don't think you ever get there. Maybe just before you die. I'm really thinking that is a moment, perhaps, when all sorts of things come to you.
It's about waste by that time you go, oh, I'm
yes, wait a minute. Oh, couldn't I just have a few more days?
Yeah, I mean, wild and rebellious, and yet now, I mean, if you admit that in yourself, now you seem to be almost the pillar of the establishment, a happily married woman with
but that again is what people say.
I mean, I do understand you completely, because I think most people have this themselves. I mean, I too have this feeling. One half of me feels very rebellious, and the other half yearns for some kind of stability. But I do wonder in myself, and I wonder if you wonder it too, where that rebellion comes from and what the root of it is.
Well, I think it's what it is. It's what drives you on. It's what makes you never complacent. It's what makes you never constantly stable, because stability is a state that some people get into and say, right, I must stay here because this is okay, I feel reassured. But other people, perhaps like yourself or like myself, immediately as a situation becomes stable, I destabilize it. Now, who knows why? It's because I always want to progress. I always think there's something more to find out, there's something more to do. We have so little time here.
What have you done to do that?
Well, I think in the roles that I've taken, I've always done that, because I've always taken roles that would destabilize me. I've taken people who are profoundly complex and broken and mad and insane or murderesses or all those types of people, just to go as far as I can into those areas of the human psyche, which I don't want to go to in person, because I don't want to end up in prison or in a loony bin. But on that level, that's what I've done through my work.
If you've done it a couple of times successfully, in a way, isn't that being rather safe? You know that those are areas that you can handle, that you do expertly and to great critical acclaim. They are, in a way, a safe ground for you.
Yes and no, because the more you do them, the closer you come to that very, very dangerous level, that fine line which demarks us from actually going insane or not, which we're all very close to anyway. And you can push yourself quite far there, and you have to know when to pull back. And I think that I didn't work too often for quite a while, because I was getting very close to that. Because if you keep repeating that and repeating that experience, it becomes a bit spooky.
Really? What made you see facets of your personality you hadn't been aware of, or what elements?
Well, not so much that you're not aware of, but you're actually living them out. If you play with a certain amount of truth, and there's always the thing with the actor, is an actor lying or not? Is the whole game of acting a lie? And you can either convince yourself that it's the truth, which is the way I act, and that's when it can become dangerous. You see what I mean?
Yes, because then you can't leave it behind when the clapper goes.
You can't, no. And then you have a lot of battles afterwards to sort of scramble back to some kind of, some kind of stable ground. Walk with you. Talk with you.
I don't imagine you're the sort that goes salmon fishing, are you?
Those brave salmon.
I know, it's a fantastic salmon river though. Sometimes they leap up. I mean, just look at the state of those guys fishing. Just imagine having to spend a whole evening having dinner with a guy who wore a cap like that.
Well, it's all part of the ritual. They wouldn't be able to accept catching a salmon if they weren't dressed like that.
Oh, you think it could be worse? You could be a salmon. You see, when you're married to somebody who speaks a different language from them, although you speak fluent French, can you ever really communicate completely? Are there not subtleties of language that means that you sometimes miss the mark?
Well, with Jean-Michel, I speak French because my French is virtually fluent because I learned it when I was a kid. And so I've learned now over the last 10 years, it's completely a second language. So I can, feel as much in French as I can in English.
So when you're being passionate, what do you speak to each other?
Oh, français! It's the language of the passion.
Are you actually quite passionate, or is that all film persona? Or would you say you are quite a passionate person?
Oh, I think so, yes.
Yes. Is he as well?
Yes. Yes, he lives up to his Latin reputation. Hot-blooded.
Ooh.
Ooh. That sounds old. She nearly lost her footing then when I said that.
I know, I got all excited. And hot and sweaty. We were talking about children and being a mother. You admitting to yourself that you're rebellious, how will you react should your children become very rebellious later in life? Would you be disappointed, or is that exactly what you expect of them?
Well, I think it's, to a certain extent, all young people at certain stages of their lives need to rebel or need to feel that they are breaking new ground. And so, the thing that a young person doesn't want to feel is it's all been done before, and so much of it has been done before, but he somehow has to assert, his individuality by doing something that he thinks is totally original. And if it means, dressing in the weirdest type of gear and, I don't know, using a strange sort of language and hanging around with all sorts of extraordinary types. So that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's part of his growing up process. There's nothing wrong with that at all. The only thing I would be frightened about is anything to do with drugs.
I presume all the people used to knock about in the 60s.
Well, there was
whack them down like nobody's business.
Yeah, there was a certain glamour that was attached to them then, which thank God there isn't now. And the glamour very soon faded when everything went drastically wrong and people became completely strung out and their lives were ruined because of them.
Would you say then that you're very protective of your family and your home life?
Yeah, I would say I am.
Does that surprise you that you've become like that?
Yes, it did in a sense. It's sort of almost like, primeval instinct, that protective in the sense that of allowing the maximum amount of freedom, but within a structure. I guess it's a structure that I had too much, because my father being a military man, it was very structured and there were a lot of rules and regulations. And I find that the structure part is very important in terms of, of a child feeling safe within an environment.
Was your father very structured in his upbringing of you then? Did he make you adhere to his set of values and rules?
Yeah, but his set of values were very good and very just, so that was fine. I mean, he had a way of putting them across which may have been rather severe and made one maybe a bit frightened of them. But in fact, that was just because I think quite a lot of children are often frightened of adults anyway, and the way they deal with their children.
But what was frightening about him particularly?
I think his temper was always used to frighten me. You know, he was an angry man because I think he hadn't solved a lot of problems about his own life. Do you know what I mean? He would be, in a sense, he had certain frustrations that I could feel but didn't understand, and you just play off those feelings as a child.
Well, what kind of role did your mother play in the family then if your father had some destructive elements about his character?
Well, she was a very gregarious, open and loving person. And I think she was, you know, she was quite intimidated by it too, but she loved him very much, and we all sort of just obeyed his rules sort of unconsciously in a sense, you know, so that we all were careful not to set off his temper, or because that was always an unpleasant moment. I think I've been ultra sensitive as to not put that on to my environment, always. I mean, I've gone almost right the other way, in a sense, of not putting any kind of dogmatism or absoluteness into the environment.
It seems a great deal easier for men. And I think also the confusion about being a modern woman is what exactly we're supposed to be doing in life.
Yeah, it is, because it's also a situation which women haven't lived with very long, considering their history.
Yeah.
You know, it's really very, in quotes, the liberated woman still has quite a long way to go.
I mean, do you feel entirely liberated now? Have you got through all that?
I think liberation is something completely personal. I think it's that you can't compare anyone's form of liberation in quotes with another. I mean, it just depends on how, if you feel trapped or not in any situation. And if you feel trapped in a situation, it means that you need to liberate yourself from that situation if you can. Now, a lot of people can't.
You know, it's through the years in your earlier film career, some of your sternest critics were always women, accusing you of all manner of betrayals and the feminine kind. Just as soon as you took your blouse off, it was automatically some kind of slap in the face for women's lib.
Well,
I mean, why is that? I mean, why did these women find you so antipathetic?
I think it was very much at that time, it was very much when women's liberation movement was at its height, and that anything that was remotely feminine was something, you know, that was immediately pilloried as being, you know, anti-feminist, which was quite ridiculous. It's nothing to do with that.
I mean, I recall one of the biggest storms of protest was over the Paul Newman film The Verdict, when you were quoted as having said,
oh yeah.
What was it? I can't remember the exact. It was something like, women would be more sensible if they had a bit of a slap round the face more often. I presume you were being facetious.
Well, of course I was. But I mean, you can't make those kind of offhand remarks without it sort of being just thrown around the world like a ping pong ball. And in fact, something about the slapping also, they were furious at the fact that a man could slap a woman. But I mean, if you've seen all the 40s movies, there's hardly a movie without some woman getting a real backhander from the man.
Are you a violent person?
Yeah, very.
Then how have you learned to control that?
Oh, lots of different ways, I guess. Some of, as you said before about acting, can also be a kind of exorcism. As long as it doesn't, you know, take you over completely, and that you can retain a certain sense of reality and not, you know, and not become completely detached and go off into another world. But violence is also something which is a very exciting feeling, as long as it can be tamed, as long as it can be controlled. Violence is very close to passion, very close to hatred, which is very close to love, so that all those feelings, those strong feelings, are extremely important as long as they just don't get out of control. I mean, you know, what comes out again in terms of an image is, yeah, I've controlled a certain amount of my image because I don't want people to know certain sides about me. I'll let them know about those sides of me through films, but I don't want them to know about them in myself. Do you see what I mean? So obviously there's a certain amount of a facade that is built up to protect yourself, because I want to protect myself from eyes that pry too deeply into my own psyche. I don't mind about how much they pry into my work, but I don't want them to pry too deeply into my own personal psyche.
So do you find this uncomfortable?
No, I don't, because I can always stop it when it goes too far. I don't have to say anything to you that I don't really want to.
Well, it's been wild enough for you then.
Well, I suppose this is how I imagined it would be, so I can't complain. As long as we don't get entirely blown away and thrown out to sea, I suppose this is just about right for me.
When you talk about your love of wild places like this, the wilderness and the need to be here for your soul, but in spiritual terms, what do you do? Do you have a religion you adhere to, or is it something else?
Not a religion, it's just a belief, I suppose. I believe in a state of mind that can exist. I believe that there is a certain state mentally that you can get to which gives you peace. And if that's believing in, in whatever you make your God into being, then that's fine. It doesn't matter who or what.
Oh,
oh, she's lost her flag!
I have to tie my hair up again. I'll do it later.
You can do a bit of prinking when we get into the cove.
You were saying?
I don't know what I was saying. What was I saying?
A state of mind that your God exists within yourself.
Yeah, and it's just a question of your own personal belief in yourself and in your relationship to, life.
But isn't that a bit of a... isn't that sort of state of mind where do you want to sit down and sort of out the wind? Isn't it a bit of a cheat? Because surely religion and spirituality within religion is about discipline and adhering to something that you believe will bring you that peace.
Yes, but what will if it's not yourself? I mean, it's just depending on what you can bring to yourself to give you that feeling of peace, because religion is, to me, a feeling of oneness with yourself and a feeling of being at one with your environment and at one with nature and at one with yourself, because it's only yourself that you can live with. To me, projecting, if you want to project into living your life for a God, then that's fine too, if that's what can give you personal satisfaction.
You lost your sister at a very early age, which was always a big blow to you. How did you cope with that? Did you imagine that she would continue to live in some other way, that you would see her again or not?
Yeah, I imagine that she was around, and I think that that people are around when you lose them, and it's just you wait until you'll be actually sort of connected up with them later on at some later time. And I think dealing with any kind of that kind of suffering in the end only makes you stronger, because it makes you delve deeply into areas which perhaps you wouldn't have delved into before. Do you know what I mean? That's when I went into perhaps looking into different types of religion when she died, because I thought that I needed to find some kind of crutch at that stage to help me through.
But you're admitting that it is a crutch. You might be sort of fibbing to yourself a bit.
No, but you need crutches all the way along. You need the crutch of love. You need the crutch of many different things. It's not weakness. That is not weakness at all. I don't consider that weakness.
What would you consider weakness then?
Not confronting the truth inside yourself, avoiding the confrontation of truth, avoiding difficult situations, avoiding trying to understand, what makes people tick, of sort of just burying your head in the sand.
I'm interested in you describing the necessity for crutches of, say, love and a belief in an afterlife, as not being weak. You seem such a strong person in other aspects, a very realistic person down to earth, and yet the belief in an afterlife, say, when there's obviously no evidence pointing to one and you don't adhere to any particular religion, seems to me to be, perhaps weak is the wrong way, but then is the wrong word to describe it, but it's certainly not very realistic, and it doesn't seem...
But I'm not a realistic person. I don't know whatever you ever made you think that.
Really? Well, if you're not realistic, what are you?
I don't know. I don't think I want to know.
Really? But you want to know so much else about yourself. Why?
Well,
don't you?
not about myself, but about life. Not necessarily about myself, because I'm just a channel. Life goes through me. I have a heart that beats, and life goes through me. I have an intelligence which hopefully will give me some answers that I seek. That's all.